pathways through the use of water. I have the irrigation canal in Sri Lanka here as an indication of the connections between water and society. The way that a society created irrigation water, and to do that, society, social institutions and relationships were required. So, three obvious ways, though not exclusive, through which water and society make each other. As irrigation water is created and used, it enables a more productive agriculture and jobs. Similarly and obviously, the defeat of waterborne disease vectors lengthens human life. And household water supply, that is, water supply to the home and into the home or homestead, frees time from water collection and expands capabilities. All of these involve both the creation of water and the creation of institutions to make and use water. So roughly, my suggestion is that on the one hand, water is generative, so water and society make each other, water use generates wealth and capabilities, but at the same time, social differentiation inherent in capitalism and existing processes of differentiation associated with water and sanitation use generate inequity. In principle, it's possible to rethink those injustices in order to generate pathways out of deprivation and injustice. So, why equitable water governance? The argument of this special issue is simply that inequalities in water are comparable to inequalities in income, land, and wealth. For exactly the reasons I've been talking about, water brings wealth and poverty, health and disease. So the argument follows that equitable water is a matter of public concern and public action. And here we see on the right an irrigation canal in the Andes and women carrying water in Cairo. So one useful way of thinking about inequitable government or water injustices came up during in the special issue, and Margriet Zwartveen, one of our panelists, is particularly associated with laying out these nodes of inequitable governance. So she and Rutger Boelens argue that inequitable governance occurs at least 4 levels or nodes. Most obviously in the allocation and distribution of water. So, for example, farmers with water and farmers without water pumps have very different livelihood possibilities. And inequitable norms and practices are built into the ways that societies use water. And very crude examples of that, the gender division of labor means frequently that in many parts of the world, girls are kept out of school so that they can be involved in water collection. And at the same time, others get water and are unable to go to work. Authority and laws is another area where water injustices arise, where, for example, and again an example researched by others in the conference, existing practices and laws may be subordinated to national law, with examples such as villages losing their water supply to a mining enterprise and having only polluted and much more limited water, while large pipes pass by their communities carrying water preferentially diverted to a mining enterprise. And the fourth of these levels or nodes of inequitable governance is the way we think about and talk about water. So our tendency to think of water as to do with technical expert questions frequently excludes wider discussions involving people who use and make water. On the right-hand column in this slide, I have some very rough notes about pathways to equity. Perhaps the most important of these relates to questions of water, democracy, and justice. So all the four nodes at the left, there are possibilities for contestation. And a second area, a much wider dialogue that's not confined to expertise, politicians, the landed, and the elites. And thirdly, amongst these, the need for citizen investigation and protest. I mention here the second point, the tendency of global discourse and the discourse of all governments around the world to focus primarily on safe drinking water to the exclusion of wider uses of domestic water. And let me go. There are also possibilities in the third point for creative state-citizen relationships in low-income urban areas arising from new forms, arising from two things. One, recognition of informal forms of enterprise and the use of new information technology is providing better data. So one of the areas that came out, particularly in the special issue and in the discussions that went before the special issue, was the growing importance of water justice movements. And I think a number of panelists may mention this topic. So the example on the left is women, in the photo is women protesting inadequate water supply in Mumbai, India. I list on the right a number of other examples of movements that have where grassroots groups, community groups have organized to try to improve water equity. So I mentioned the landless labor and toiling peasants movement of Maharashtra, which expanded opportunities for water distribution in a large irrigation scheme. Quite a number of examples in the Andes of peasants contesting mining injustices. In the special issue, we have descriptions of creative democratic governance in Venezuela and Honduras, and a number of other sources have talked about contestation of citizenship through water payments in urban India. So, to summarize, what I think the special issue suggests is that there is much room for a broader idea of equity, going beyond allocation and distribution to cultural recognition and political participation, democratic rights, and a crucial point that many of the ideas of inequity and justice emerge not from top down but from grassroots organizations. Okay, that's all I want to say.
Well, thank you for that contribution. That was a good overview, and I appreciate that introduction to the topic, which I think we're going to be discussing more in depth here today with the other presentations. Um, and I was particularly taken with your discussion about discourse and how it's often kind of framed as a technical issue. And I sort of see this webinar and some of the work we're doing here with policy briefs as an attempt to kind of reach out through that technical, academic, difficult to understand concepts, and sort of hopefully open this up to more people. I mean, this webinar is open and available to anyone around the world. We have people all around the world tuning in today. So I think that really connects. Um,